Hello, everybody. Welcome back to OMB Reviews. I am the critic who is a cynic. Hoping well, today we're doing a box office breakdown for this past weekend, which saw Bad Boys Ride or Die open over the initial projections for the weekend. So very good news for this fourth film, this fourthquel, whatever it is that the language they're using to talk about these movies today. But it is indeed a very, very strong showing for the film, with the initial estimates being as low as $40 million and the highest estimates being closer to $55 million. This film clocking in around $56 million and breaking $100 million internationally. Will this film actually be able to break, even though it did have a $100 million budget, which is definitely modest by most standards of the top films at the box office, especially the last couple of years, but still means they have to make probably closer to $300 million worldwide just to break even, since a lot of that money will probably be coming from those international markets, though it is right now tracking ahead domestically versus internationally. This is something, of course, where many of the people watching this film probably interested in seeing the likes of Will Smith, likes of Martin Lawrence as well. So whether or not this film truly is putting summer back on track, as Tony is saying here, I think is being a little disingenuous, which is, again, something very common amongst mainstream media, especially box office media, because they're all trying to prepare for what eventually will be the opening weekend next weekend for the next Disney Pixar film, Inside Out 2. And there's a lot of speculation as far as what that film is going to see. Is it going to get to $70 million, which is the lowest estimate right now, or is it going to get to $100 million, which is towards the higher end of that estimate? Or is it just going to fall flat on its face? Personally, I think the lower portion of that will probably be a bit more accurate. And also the big question is going to be, how does that hold down the line? And that's also going to be, for Ride or Die, the ultimate decider of whether it breaks even. So we'll talk about that. Also, updates on Furiosa, the Garfield film, and a plethora of other content. Before going any further, though, please make sure you smash that like button, loud that fire button over on Odyssey, and smash the rumble button as well. Also, make sure that you are subscribed to the channel with that little bell notification turned on. That way you know every time your video or live stream goes live on the channel. So as Tony's talking about here, saying it is back on track, summer is, for this new Will Smith, Martin Lawrence, Bad Boys Ride or Die film with the $56 million opening. It says it had a great Saturday of $19.5 million, which is a 10% drop against the Thursday, Friday combined numbers of $21.6 million, and it's looking like it's going to be around $56 million. This is the highest grossing R-rated opening since Oppenheimer last July, and Will Smith's sixth highest U.S.-Canada opening overall of his career, and his 18th number one opening as a leading man. Now, the one stat, of course, that I will say there is when it says the sixth highest opening of his career. That's, of course, before you adjust for inflation. And I know that I've already triggered some people, but the reason why it's important to keep those things in mind is because ultimately it does matter. Because even at $56 million as an opening weekend, when you adjust for inflation, that puts us as being the second lowest opening in the franchise, the third highest opening if you want to go from that direction. But the number that is much more interesting to me is the total number of ticket sales, right? So the first film back in 1995 had around 3.5 million tickets sold. That went all the way up to 7.7 for Bad Boys 2, went down to 6.6 back in 2020, and now has gone down further to 4.3 million. And so even though on paper, 56 million sounds like a lot of money versus a $100 million budget, right? Sounds like a lot. But keep this in mind about the number of people actually going to see the film. Really, a good comparison is going to be Bad Boys for Life from 2020 and Bad Boys Ride or Die for 2024, because they have similar budgets when you break things down, adjust things as they are, and you're still seeing around a 2 million ticket difference between them. So 2 million less people in the domestic market going to see this film. Are those 2 million people who have been waiting to hear whether it's good or not? That could be the case. Maybe they make those people up down the road. Or are these 2 million people saying, you know what, I'm just going to wait for this thing to come out on streaming, or you know what, I don't really care for the fourth film in a franchise anymore, because again, people are feeling that way about plenty of other ones. And this is not really one that makes a lot of sense to me. I've never seen the Bad Boys films, don't quite get exactly what the attraction is, but apparently there must be some fun element to it because people are still going to see it, and the people that have seen it have given some pretty positive praise for the film. And so if that is your bag, then that is what it is. But the numbers also do not lie. 4.3 million tickets versus 6.6 million tickets in the matter of 4 years. That is still quite a lot of people that have not seen it. Now, if this film has drops similar to that of the previous films, maybe it has some life in it. Maybe it's going to be able to make that budget back up. but ultimately only time will actually tell. Going into the numbers at thenumbers.com domestically, again, not only did that $56 million give a pretty strong start domestically for this film from Sony, it also put it in the number 1 spot very, very easily. Coming in the number 2 spot this weekend was the Garfield film, dropping 29% in week 3. So that's a pretty strong hold there. So Garfield probably going to leg out a little bit. It's at the point now where even according to my RCC, my random crazy charting, when you take into account how little they get internationally versus domestically, talking about what studios get versus what theaters get in all the different countries. The Garfield film is on the cusp of being able to actually make its money back. And as I've mentioned previously, that is something that I thought was going to happen, if not this week, then next week. So next week, absolutely by that time, it will even have broken even, making profits according to that charting. According to my official charting, this film has already started to make money. But again, we do try to keep things as even-toned, even-keeled as we can here on OMB Reviews, trying to keep things also realistic. So Garfield doing very well, going to make some fair profit at this point after 3 weeks of release. The new film, or rather, the film If, or IF, Imaginary Friend from Paramount, seeing strong holds down the stretch, but still holding from a very weak opening. The film right now could potentially get to, and again has a good chance, I would say actually at this point, of getting to $100 million by the end of next weekend, since it added another $8 million. Just keep in mind that next week, even though I think the film's opening and the film's run won't be that great, again, we'll find out what happens next weekend with the upcoming Disney Pixar film, Inside Out 2. That film still, even at a lower number, even if it does come in under projections, even if it does disappoint box office wise, will still gobble up most of the audience that are watching films like Garfield or like the IF film. And so I think that this is something where it has enough probably momentum at this point. It's only been out for 4 weeks, still dropping for 24%, still in the, not quite double digits, but high-end single digits. So I think even if it does drop off another 50-60% by next weekend, based on weekday performance, probably has a good chance of crossing 100 million domestic. But also, because it cost, again, not a crazy amount of money, but enough money, and no one really has gone to see it, the film is right now set to be a flop. The Watchers from Warner Brothers. This is also the first film from the daughter of M. Night Shyamalan, apparently following in his footsteps from what I've heard, trying to have, a twist at the end that apparently doesn't work for a lot of people. This film coming in the single digits. Some had this upwards of getting close to $11 million domestically. Obviously, this came in at the lower end of projections at only $7 million. There is no reported budget as of the recording of this video, so whether or not this is a hit or not, or whether or not this is good or not, really depends. If the film costs $10 to $15 million, it's a decent start, right? It has about $11 million internationally at this point in time, so that would be okay. If the film is in the $20+ million range, though, this is a really bad start. This is a questionable start. So again, whether or not this film makes money or not depends on how much did it actually cost to make. And depending on that cost, if the film has a massive drop-off next weekend, especially if someone knows what the twist is and the twist makes the movie seem like it's not worth your time, but then obviously that could impact it. But The Watchers, only $7 million coming in the number 4 spot. And number 5 spot being rounded off here by Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, dropping another 40%. As I mentioned previously, even though on paper Disney might walk away in the positive for this film because they are keenly a distributor for the film and not on the line completely for the production cost of it, it still is not a huge win for anyone involved because the money is just not enough to make up for the pretty sizable budget for the film itself. Furiosa also dropped from the number 3 spot all the way down to number 6, dropping 61%. So just as we said last weekend, this film set to lose lots of money. And based on these kinds of drops, if these kinds of drops continue, well over $150 million in net losses we'll probably end up seeing for that film. Really cool to see the fact that The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring, and The Two Towers, both of them actually got in the top 10 this week, with $2.4 million being reported for The Fellowship, $1.9 million being reported for The Two Towers, this being released in 1,500 screens. So that per theater ratio is looking okay, especially for a film that came out well over 20 years ago at this point. So kudos to them for being able to have some pretty good showings there. I expected the per theater ratio to be a little bit higher personally, but hey, I think that it's probably doing pretty well. The fact it's doing better than a lot of other films that have even just recently come out says a lot about the modern state of the box office. Looking at Bad Boys, once again, is $104.6 million worldwide. As I'd mentioned, it is doing a bit better domestically than internationally, so that's definitely a place where it wants to be. But $100 million budget is not nothing, so it still has a ways to go. The Garfield film getting close to $200 million worldwide as of the recording of this video. Probably will be able to do that in the course of the next couple of days. The IF film at $160 million, as I'd mentioned before, because of the budget of this movie. It's only at 1.5 times its budget. This film needs to make about 2.5 to 3 times its budget, and if a lot of it's coming internationally, luckily most of it's coming domestically, it probably has something between 2.5 and 3 times the budget to break even. At 1.5, that is just not going to cut it. The Watchers at $11.7 million worldwide, making $7 million versus $4 million, domestic versus international. No reported budget, as I had mentioned previously, and Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes making a huge portion of its money from those international markets, and reminding ourselves that this film cost $160 million. Yes, it's at 2.2 times the budget, but because of how much it's making internationally, that means it's going to have to make closer to 3 times its budget just to be able to break even, and that's not even taking into account the fact that the biggest chunk of the international box office from any individual country is from China, of which they only get 25% returns. So that's the reason why this film on paper might look like it's doing okay, but when you actually take real numbers into account and do the math, it's not looking good for this film financially. Going to Bad Boys for Life, as I'd mentioned before about the film, again, having a good, better than expected opening, but still a far cry from even where the film was and the franchise was back in 2020. Going to the actual charts, because we love charts here on OMB Reviews, you can see that according to my metrics, the new Bad Boys film is around $87 million in the red. Now, this is taking into account a 2.5 multiplier. So taking the budget, multiplying by 2.5, typical break even in the past. Because of the new age of streaming, contracts have been changed, and so this number probably is closer to 3 times the budget, especially because of the stronger international presence by most films today. Also, again, cutting into those numbers too. So $87 million in the red probably is closer to $100 million in the red. I do have an RCC chart which takes these things into account. As you can see, based on the numbers being reported right now, around $100 million, as I had said, about $100 million in the red as of the recording of this video. So this movie, again, has a chance of breaking even, but it's all going to depend on how it does next weekend. So even though it's doing better than expected, remember, it doesn't get 100% of the box office. So at an almost close to 50-50 split between domestic and international, and this will get a China release, at least according to the numbers.com, that's going to cut in 25% of that. So we'll have to wait and see when these numbers finally get updated, when we actually start to get some of the official numbers, because keep in mind the internationals at thenumbers.com get updated every so often. So right now we have a total. We don't have the distribution of where those numbers are coming from, though. So that number actually could end up being worse if a huge portion of this number ends up coming from China. And of course, if the release date in China is later, then that might be a factor down the road. The film, The Watchers, as we had mentioned, has no actual reported budget. So at this point in time, whether it's making money or not is anyone's guess. Furiosa, the numbers aren't updating at this point in time, but just as a reminder, this film definitely is close to around $150 million in the red, or less over that at this point. Probably will end around $150 million in the red. As I mentioned before about the Garfield film, as you can see, according to this chart, because of a huge portion coming internationally, it's still about $2.6 million in the red, so it's going to be able to make that up in the course of the next couple of days. The IF film, $86 million in the red, it's not going to be able to make that up based on the numbers that we're seeing right now. And internationally, because as I mentioned, that huge chunk of money coming from China, the film is actually $87 million in the red. So that's a very important metric to mention, especially for anyone who thinks the film is a success and is doing well. The same also, of course, with The Fall Guy being pulled out of theaters, or rather being put onto PVOD, probably hurt its chances, but its opening really wasn't all that great to begin with. This film was going to be looking at $100 million in the red, regardless of that. We actually did get an update just as we were recording this. $185.4 million right now is the current projected losses for Furiosa. And as I'd mentioned, because the film is dropping off a cliff, it's probably going to end north of $150 million in the red. There are no updates as far as films in their second week of release. And so all we can say right now is Furiosa, still a massive flop. Garfield, making money, on the cusp of making money, somewhere in between. The film site not doing all that great, but according to some of the metrics that we have going on with the RCC charting, again, it's about $8 million in the red. But remember that some of these numbers have not updated, and so The film will probably end up being a complete break even for them or a slight loss. Really not a whole lot there, so they're not seeing their Sound of Freedom this year, let's just put it that way. And I don't think that they're going to see that with the films that they have yet to come out this year. There's some films that I'm excited for, but ultimately, unless you have a message that people can get behind, like a Sound of Freedom, that's going to be something where they're going to have to probably continue to play catch up to that movie, because that's the standard that they've now set for themselves. And so I think a lot of people, especially in the box office media, are going to be constantly comparing it to that. I think there is some fairness to that, but also remember that these movies, right, are just not doing nearly as well as I think that they probably could be doing. I think a big part of that is their marketing has not been very effective for a lot of these other films. The Strangers Chapter 1 has started to make its money back and started to make some profits, and the film Tarot also making profits as well at the point of this video. So these are the numbers. Do you think that Bad Boys Ride or Die is going to make its money back? Again, I think that there's an argument to be made that it could absolutely happen, but remember, it's not a 100% return on the box office investment, and that $100 million is still quite a bit of money. When you're talking about these domestic international splits being very, very close, again, the difference between $87 million in the red and $99 million in the red is quite sizable. So I think that this is something very important for us to consider, for us to look at, and I think that it's going to be something that it has to make up. Now, if it has a strong hold next weekend, very different conversation, right? If we see this film get closer to negative $50 million or less, in the course of the RCC charting, that will be a very good sign for the film's potential future. But at this point in time, and regardless of future releases, because I know there's some reporting about how Sony typically sells their films, I think, to Netflix or to some of the streaming services, so they do make money after the post-theatrical. When it comes to the actual theatrical release of the film, right now, it's hard to say whether the film will make money or not, because that's still quite a bit of money, quite a bit of change it has to make up at this point in time. Furiosa, we absolutely can say, guaranteed at this point, is a massive flop. We'll end up losing probably north of $150 million, and the Garfield film on the way to making money. What are y'all's thoughts about these films or anything else I mentioned in the comment section down below? Let me know. And as always, if you like this video, smash that like button, loud that fire button, Aussie, smash the rumble button as well. And share this video out if you found it informational. Yes. If you found the information, good information, if you found it entertaining, please share it out. It helps out more than you realize. Anyway, you guys are all amazing, and beautiful people, have a wonderful rest of your day. A blessed feast of the Sacred Heart, the external feast of the Sacred Heart of Jesus. The entire month, of course, being dedicated to that as such. Great way to be able to fight against the pride of our time, and the pride of this month is instead to look at the humility of the heart of Christ. You guys are amazing. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and as always, God bless. And now for a huge special shout out to all of my Patreon, Subscribe Star, Locals, and YouTube members who are at the Chosen of Valhalla level. Starting off with my Patreon supporters, Father Luca Illich, Rosetta Allen, check out her YouTube channel, which is Eagle Rider, and Miss Martin Muses, check out her YouTube channel by the same name. To my Subscribe Star Chosen members, Matt317, check out his Twitch channel by the same name, and also the K-Man, check him out at xtheboundaries.co, and a shout out also to my one Chosen of Valhalla YouTube member, Mr. Roy. Thank you again for being so much of a huge supporter of the channel. And to every one of my chosen members, if you want your name shouted out at the end of every live stream and video, or if you want access to things like giveaways of Blu-rays, 4Ks, etc., and access to an exclusive podcast bonus material for members, check out the links in the video description below for all of those details. You guys are amazing and beautiful people. Have a wonderful rest of your day, a blessed month of the Sacred Heart, and as always, God bless.